welcome back to Theology for the Unwanted. I'm your host, Dan Tilson, and across from me, I have my faithful co-host, John Byram. What's up, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great, dude. The traffic was really light getting here today. Do you have any idea why?
It's almost as if 80% of this region's not currently working.
It's unfortunate. Yeah. No, there is a government shutdown, and we are in week 3 over here. So the only benefit, perhaps, and I'm sorry to say this, was that it only took me 45 minutes to get here from DC.
Which is crazy to think because it's only 24 miles from DC, in all honesty. So it really shouldn't take that long. But DC traffic, the traffic here in the DMV is like that of no other.
I had a weird flashback to when I was doing a study abroad in Italy. So this is 2012.
Oh my.
And we were in the parliament in Milan. So each of the regions or the states of Italy have their own mini parliament. And they were facing the same thing. It was a shutdown. But the shutdown was supposed to start at midnight. And so what happened was, and I was sitting in the gallery for this. The gallery is where visitors who are not elected officials can sit and watch. At 11:59 p.m., someone unplugged the clock.
Oh.
Unplugged the clock. And so when it hit midnight and the government was supposed to officially shut down, they were like, sorry, we cannot. It's not midnight. And
I don't think that'd ever work here.
I couldn't believe that. No, you wouldn't believe this. So I looked this up today. There's apparently precedent in the United States. This has happened both in Arizona and in Pennsylvania. And it made me realize, why is it that at the national level in Washington, D.C., we love being stuck?
We do.
We look for reasons to be stuck. So
we invent new ways to get stuck.
We sure do. And so unfortunately, there's hundreds of thousands of people who are either working without pay at the moment because their job is essential, or they are home and looking for jobs. So we do hope that this gets back up and running soon. But in the meantime, we are going to stay stuck everywhere except for traffic.
Nothing was and this is going to sound bad, but we all remember several years ago during the pandemic when my commute was normally 45 minutes to go 13 miles in this area, all of a sudden became 9 minutes to go 13 miles. I wasn't complaining, but at the same time, I felt bad because we were in the middle of a pandemic.
This whole episode, we're going to be diving into what it means to think of the other. And here we are, we're like, oh, this is great.
But at the same time,
sorry for my tone deafness.
It's okay.
I floated this beforehand. I don't know if you had time to prepare 2 truths and a lie, or do we move on from that segment?
Oh, no, we can do that.
We can do that. Okay. So I did.
You go first, though.
Okay. We had a retreat at work the other day, and one of the icebreakers was 2 truths and a lie. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the concept, but you tell 2 facts about yourself and 1 untruth, and people have to guess what it is. So mine were, I've played soccer for 17 years and have only scored 1 goal. That's not funny.
Sorry.
The second one is I spent a summer abroad in Italy studying how to make pasta. And the third one is, in first grade, I established a squadron of safety patrols. Safety patrols, by the way, if you never had them in your school, they are trained mini security guards, I guess, at the school, and they help with, I don't know, walking people home, and they're essentially assistant crossing guards. But my third fact that I told was I established a squadron of safety patrols in first grade. Okay, any idea?
Yeah, you did not spend a semester abroad learning how to make pasta.
What makes you think that?
Because I've seen you play soccer. I'm joking. No, you usually play goalkeeper though, right?
I don't. No, I definitely don't, because I have Tourette syndrome, and so I have all these tics and stuff. So I would not be good at goalie. I would be what the punching at nothing in the air.
I mean, it's valid. I don't know. I feel like if you scored a lot of goals, you'd talk more about it. And I've never heard you talk about it.
It's because I play on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And Thursday morning, I show up to the office just a little bit disappointed every week.
And also, you organizing a safety patrol is such a Dan thing to do.
Yeah.
That was if our listeners want to learn anything about you as a person, that alone goes to show like Dan's motivation and determination to like organize and want to bring people together for a common good. That is Dan in a box right there.
Oh, well, okay. So I'll give this. By the way, you were correct.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
I knew I was right. Like I had no doubt.
Before I pass it to you for your two truths, yeah, no, I guess a story that would describe me is we went on a field trip to the U.S. Capitol in third grade. Third grade. What are you, 9 years old then? Maybe 8 because you've just made your first communion the year before.
I was in this country when I was in third grade. Okay. So that's fine.
Well, I found out that the woman leading our tour was a United States congresswoman, and I didn't quite understand what that meant, but I knew she was important. So I walked to the front of the line and I looked up at her and I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, it's crowded in here. Don't you think we should hold hands so we don't get lost?" And so at third grade, the U.S. Congresswoman held my hand for the entire tour of the Capitol. And that was me at 8 or 9 years old, understanding proximity to power.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Now you know more.
And the more you know.
The less you like.
The less.
Okay. All right, John, tell me, what are your facts?
I completely forgot mine, so I'm going to have to try to wing this now. I have my pilot's license.
Okay.
I have a tattoo of the Franciscan coat of arms on my arm. And I used to have my own television show on TV.
Okay, so for our listeners who don't know you as well, you did have your own TV show.
I did.
I don't know if I can say the name of the network here, but
the network technically doesn't exist because it was acquired, so I think you can.
Okay, well, go ahead.
It was NBC Sports Washington.
That's right. And we're all angry at their successor right now for not showing the... Nope, sorry, we're not getting into that.
Oh, please don't get into that.
Yeah, we're not getting... Sorry, I should point out that through our media liability insurance that we are insured, and so we try not to say dumb stuff.
Yes.
Okay. So you did have your own television show. That was really cool, especially during COVID when everyone was home and I could just, turn the TV on and show off my friend.
It was awkward when I had friends on vacation and they were like in upstate New York and they're like, "Why are you on my TV in my hotel?" Like that was very awkward, but cool at the same time.
You do have your pilot's license, I believe.
Correct.
Okay.
I do.
So I'm kind of disappointed to find out you don't have a tattoo of the Franciscan coat of arms.
Now, it is something I have flirted with because I do have a devotion to St. Francis and a lot of other Franciscan saints. And I did spend time with the conventual Franciscans, something that is still near and dear to my heart. I still communicate with my brothers back there with the conventual Franciscans. So yeah. Yeah,
it's in the works. It's in the works.
Maybe one day when I get over my fear of needles.
Oh, okay. Well, if it's the needles keeping you away from the tattoo, it's going to be a while then.
It's going to be a very while.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, I guess this is a perfect segment. You probably didn't realize that we were going to do this, but it is the other Francis, the other perhaps Saint Francis, I might say. Okay, too early.
I felt the earth shake there a little bit when you said that. It must.
We are, unfortunately, sadly, 6 months past the passing of Pope Francis. And I spent a lot of time reflecting on him this week because his teachings, his style, his approach, it was such a breath of fresh air. And it felt like I was getting a glimpse back into the life of St. Francis, who was helping the church find a way to be authentic and move forward in an equally crazy, of course, back then they weren't using the word modern, but it was St. Francis of Assisi was helping the church through the modern times of that era. And Pope Francis just as equally was helping us, as we're getting through all of the scandals of abuse. We have a world that seems to be going back towards war. And he was such a breath of fresh air. And I really, really miss him. I love Pope Leo, but I really miss Francis.
I think what Francis brought to the table, I think you mentioned it, and it's spot on, is that breath of fresh air, right? Because
who am I to judge?
Yeah, who am I to judge? Like that was probably one of the simplest things a pope could say to literally cause like the earth to shake in a good way, right? Because when we talk about Catholicism, especially in English-speaking countries, it's very easy, and we talk about it here on the show all the time, to fall into the political aspect of the church, right? So who am I to judge? A lot of us have our own things we deal with, our own vices, our own addiction to certain sins, our own struggles in life. Life is complicated enough as it is. Who am I to judge? I don't know about you, Dan. I don't have enough time in my life to worry about what other people are doing wrong in their life, but I have no problem going out of my way to help someone out when they ask for help or when they're in need of help. That's something that was instilled in me at a young age, even before I converted to Catholicism. Who am I to judge? Everyone is created in the image and likeness of God, which means if I'm judging someone else, I'm judging God. And who am I to judge God? I can't do that. I don't have time to do that. I need to judge myself and make myself holier and be a better Christian and a better Catholic.
His simple lifestyle really lent a lot of credibility to that. I love John Paul II. I remember when he was very, very close to death, so many people online were making comments like, oh, he's surrounded by gold. He's surrounded by, and of course we had just started to learn about the scope of the global abuse crisis in our church. Now, John Paul II living in the Apostolic Palace, which is where Leo XIV is currently living, it is a much more modest arrangement than you might expect. I mean, from the title palace, especially one attached to the Vatican. But Pope Francis was very cognizant that he needed to show the church that we were capable of something different. Even though, quite frankly, in the guest house that he was living in, the Apostolic Palace really is simple enough to the point that I would say there was almost no difference between what Pope Francis was living in and where Pope Leo is living. But Pope Francis wanted to be close to the people, and so he took up residence in what effectively is a hotel on the Vatican property, but not attached to the palace or the basilica. And he would eat every day with the staff and the residents and the visitors. Yes, he had his own table, but he was there present with the people. And there was a sort of accessibility that I remember listening to a lecture about St. Francis of Assisi and St. Francis of Assisi getting an audience with the Pope. And the lecture, I wish I could remember his name right now, but he was basically trying to make the point at just how impossible it was. Doesn't even matter how well connected St. Francis of Assisi's bishop was. It was impossible to get close to the Pope, even in those days. And yet here we have a Pope living in a very simple hotel. I was lucky enough to stay there 3 different times. And the image, by the way, that we're going to use on, at least on Instagram, as the cover for this episode, I sent you that photo. Do you remember what it is?
It was a photo. What was it? You were like leaving
dinner,
and where were you going?
McDonald's.
Okay, so again, you're an American in Italy going to McDonald's.
Do it.
Oh God, it's.
Have you tried the McFlurries over there? They are.
I
different.
will say this for those who have not traveled outside of the country: McDonald's outside of the U.S. is so different.
5-star restaurant.
It's amazing. It's a completely different experience. It looks the same, completely different food. Everything is night and day. American McDonald's, please bring that here. It's all I'm going to say. But you got a nice little picture, right? And he was like giving you like a wave or something.
Yeah, he was wishing me goodnight as I was leaving his dinner to go to McDonald's.
You rejected the Pope for Ronald McDonald.
I just had to reassert my, screeching eagle warrior ethos.
Oh boy.
Pope Francis, he had an incredible way of challenging people who worked for the church. Somebody actually cornered me a few weeks ago and they're like, there was a culture of fear in the Vatican when he was there. And I was like, yeah, sort of. Because no, there really was. There was this sort of annoyance. I don't know if you remember, right after he became Pope, he started walking around the parking lot in the Vatican. Okay, so he had a notepad and he had a guard with him and he would point to a certain car of a certain stature and say, who owns that? And very quickly word spread across the Vatican, sell your expensive car, get something more modest. And so he was enforcing it right away. And also, he went back to the location where there's like 3 or 4 hotels in Rome that serve as a staging point for cardinals during the conclave.
Story.
And He went back to the hotel, now dressed in white, and he insisted on paying his bill. And they were like, this is your hotel now. That's part of the deal. You're the king. This is your hotel. And he was like, I need to set an example. And so he paid it. It was so inspiring to see that our church can understand the daily lives of the people, that our church is capable of knowing, to some extent at least, what it is that we in the pews are facing with mounting credit card debt, with rising costs of food, that we're not going to just pass around a basket and essentially lay this problem on the people in the pews. That was actually a comment I saw on our TikTok earlier today. It was like, there's a saying that, money makes the world go around. We do have a tendency in the church to be like, let's pass the basket around instead of actually encountering. Okay, so let me try and get to the point here. Pope Francis had this apostolic exhortation, which is a letter. It's not like the highest level of Catholic teaching, but an exhortation basically is an instruction to the bishops. Take this letter and teach it. And this is called Gaudete et Exultate, which is joy and hope. And he is regretting two harmful errors that he sees in the world. He says, on the one hand, we have the people that just want the church to kind of be this place that serves the poor, but they're lacking spirituality. I think this is a good moment to pass this on to our resident Franciscan in the room. Do you know anything about, I want to bring this to St. Bonaventure. He was kind of like the big intellect of the Franciscan movement in the 13th century. Do you know anything about St. Bonaventure?
Of course.
Oh, well, do tell.
Well, what do you want to know?
I don't know. Just anything fun about him?
Fun about him? Well, fun fact, no one really knows about his childhood. There's that. He became Franciscan at like 22, I think. It was like 22 or 23. But yeah, no, his big thing, not only was he like one of the major theologians for the Franciscan order, but like he also helped like calm a potential schism in the Franciscan order when it came to the interpretation of poverty.
Okay.
Which was really cool.
What was the deal?
So the deal obviously this is after Francis's time, right? So
St. Francis of Assisi.
St. Francis
so
of
Assisi. So we're
Assisi.
talking like what, the 1100s, 1200s?
I believe it's like mid to late 1200s.
Okay.
So the order is starting to grow. Obviously, the example St. Francis showed was very attractive to a lot of people, right? The idea of following God in its purest form, giving everything up, relinquishing your ownership over any material goods, donning the clothes of the socially outcast, and spending your time in prayer and serving the poor and needy. That's great. That's fine. But when your order starts to grow, you now need new ways to provide service, to minister to those people on the margins that are outcast from society. Things tend to get a little bit harder the bigger your organization gets.
Hardcore poverty is not exactly a recipe for recruitment.
Correct. So that was the issue, is there was essentially two groups that formed. You had the group that wanted to stay true to the radical poverty of St. Francis, of not owning anything and literally wearing rags, but still carrying out the mission that St. Francis believed in, reaching out to the margin, the people that were rejected in society, the people that maybe the people in the church pews were not welcoming into the churches back then. There's this ongoing argument of, as this organization grows, as this order grows, is it okay to own materials to help minister to those people? And one group said, absolutely not. We have to be able to do this. Extreme poverty to the T. And the other group was like, well, what if we have things in our possessions that are used for ministry, but it's not over the top? Right? It's not, hey, we need to get to point A to point B. Let's get ourselves a BMW. It's, hey, let's get a point A to point B.
Let's get ourselves a Fiat.
A Fiat or a used Honda Civic, right? Is what I
see the difference.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, right? So that's kind of how we really came up with multiple different Franciscan orders in the first order. You have your OFMs, your conventuals, and your capuchins. The conventuals is essentially the direction the Franciscan order went in result of this argument about poverty. The conventuals believe you can own modest things in community. So you don't own it, the community owns it. So when you see a conventual Franciscan, they may have a cell phone. It may not be an Apple iPhone 17 Pro Max. It's probably a donated phone that's an Apple iPhone 13 or something. But it's usually something that is donated by parishioners. They don't actually go out and buy it. Or, fun fact, what a lot of people don't realize, a lot of phone companies out there have religious order deals.
Oh, sweet.
Which is something that I didn't know until I was with the Franciscans.
I love that.
So, but they don't own it. It's owned by the community. So when Sister Death comes, it's not their physical property. It's the community's property. So it gets repurposed back into the order.
Sister Death.
Sister Death.
Do they actually say that?
Yeah.
Oh man, that feels okay. So I've been to New Orleans many times, and let me tell you, in the voodoo circles, I feel like they have a figure named Sister Death.
I mean, it's very Franciscan, but yes.
Okay.
But Sister Death, yes.
So you said, the first thing you said about him, I think, was he calmed a potential schism.
Yeah.
I like that you used the word calm, because in his writings, I know more of his writings than I do his tradition as a historic figure, but he was all about tranquilizing the mind.
Yes.
So calming the mind. And of course, when you're talking about poverty, it's super, like, if poverty is the value, I mean, I could always give more, right? I could give more money. If I have even 1 cent, I could give more money. But then you could say, well, you're wearing clothes. And then I could basically take this off to the point that I make it. And then you could still find something else that I could give. He said, let's not get trapped. Let's try and understand the intentions of the heart. And I think that was a really important thing to do as the church was becoming more philosophical in his age. He was contemporary with Aquinas. They agreed for the most part on all of the major things that were developing at that time. But he always saw his charity as something that deepened his prayer life. And St. Bonaventure saw prayer as something that fuels charity. Charity for him, doing this act of service for the poor, giving things away. That was a way to take his mind and conform it to the eternal God and get a little glimpse of what it's like when one day we pass through this world and we are hopefully all in heaven together. You have a thought?
No, I'm trying to remember if it's Saint Bonaventure who said it or not, but during this time, one of the biggest worries in regards to poverty was the idea of poverty for perspective or poverty for the visual effect, right? Like, are we doing this because poverty leads us closer to God in order for us to carry out his mission? Or are we doing this to show people we're being poor?
Okay, it's interesting you say that, because I was trying to imagine earlier today, what if St. Bonaventure lived in the year 2025 and he had the option to go to a rally, to a march, to a protest? What if he could vote? Like, would he do these things? And then how? We can't really know for sure, right? But I think it's guaranteed that he would always say, well, what's the intent of the heart? Remember how we would say a couple episodes ago, we talked about the second reason, and we're like, I could either give you a handshake as a sign of friendship, or I could give you the exact identical handshake from the outside. People might think it looks like friendship, but I'm trying to dominate you.
Correct.
Yeah. So he would say, look at the second reason. That's not what he said in his day, but that was the point.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Pope Francis said, hey guys, we have to be really careful not to become an NGO. We're not out there doing good things because it's fun, because of humanity. No, it is a form of living out Christianity. And he said, for the great saints like Francis of Assisi, Vincent de Paul, Mother Teresa, Pope Francis says, for these great saints, mental prayer, the love of God, and reading the gospel in no way detracted from their passionate and effective commitment to their neighbors. Quite the opposite. The other thing that Pope Francis wanted to warn against was on the exact opposite side of that. He was like, we cannot become political in a worldly sense. He said, we cannot start being suspect of other people who have different opinions than us. We cannot look at somebody who is doing charity and then immediately say, let me quote him here, I believe he actually says, yeah, we cannot look at the social / charitable engagement of others and see it as superficial, worldly, secular, materialist, communist, or populist. He was like, knock it off, guys.
Wow. Who am I to judge their intentions? Wow.
I mean, it's hard from the outside to know if somebody's obsessed with charity, why? I've told you that I have multiple second reasons. One, I don't want people to grow up in the kind of parish community that I had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hopeful that when people come to my current parish, I'm serving the coffee after Mass. I'm putting together with a large group of volunteers dinner for the homeless. My aim is that when you show up on Sunday, no matter what it is that you're carrying that I don't know about in your personal life, that you walk out of Mass saying like, hey, that was worth the investment going. And because I was surrounded by a community that cared, I could also listen to the gospel. That's my hope. So Pope Francis says, knock it off with the two errors, the two extremes, either only being about charity or only being about preaching. We have to understand that these two together make for a lived Christianity. So it's October still, and that means that at least in the United States, it is Respect Life Month. Do you remember in college when we would all go to the March for Life together as part of Catholic Campus Ministry?
Yeah, us and every parish and youth group around the country that would descend on to Washington, D.C.
Dude, let me tell you, there are always at least 3 high schools that stay at my parish because we're only a few blocks off of the march route for the March for Life. And so instead of staying at a hotel, they're staying for free in our parish. I do not think insurance should allow our parish to have that many children unsupervised in the parish that are staying overnight. And yes, I know they have chaperones, but when you have 200 kids, that is not what a church is built for. Have we learned nothing? Have we learned nothing?
And our parishes aren't built like community centers like our churches were back in the day.
Dude, good recall.
Yeah, there you go. Look at
that. If you are a newer listener here, please keep in mind that churches did not used to have pews in them. That's because churches were literally community centers, and that they understood the Eucharist as being the central focus of that community center. But it wasn't just for liturgy, it was for living life. So, okay.
All right. 14 high school youth groups coming to the March for Life.
Let me just go on record saying I think it's a bad idea. I don't think there have been any complaints or anything bad happening, but that doesn't mean that next January. Okay. Where was I going with this? Oh, Respect Life Month. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so what do you remember from the March for Life?
Oh, gosh. Well, I remember volunteering for the Life is Very Good rally prior to that at our alma mater, which was another massive pre-rally rally with usually a beautiful mass that's put together, and then a very, very early bus trip into DC. And usually the weather was one of two things. It was either very snowy or frigid cold and a lot of wind. I don't feel like it was one or the other.
The sun was just decoration.
It was. It was there. It was present, but it was not working.
Yeah.
We needed a maintenance man to turn the heat on.
Here's the thing. So I've been to every March for Life since 1991, technically 1990 if you count me being in the womb, which I would think that you would for this purpose.
I mean, I believe that would count.
Okay. Well, having worked in Congress for many years, it was always a big deal for us to throw a reception for the March for Lifers coming from whatever state I was working for at the time. And the funny thing was some years we would be out of session, meaning that there are no elected officials around at that time and Congress is essentially closed. And so you have these hundreds of thousands of people who have marched to show their government, we're going to show the man that we really value human dignity, only to find out that the man is out of town.
Yep.
Man, but the March for Life was fun, I have to admit. Like, there were a lot of people that were not pro-life that were with us, they were, it's kind of what we did as a community. We went, a lot of them felt conflicted about going, but their school was going. It was a chance for a field trip to DC. And I think regardless of where your enthusiasm is for the March for Life, that it's really good for the community to be together in such large numbers. I think it's really, really beautiful to see the impact that the church can have. Because let's be honest, that is really a Catholic rally.
It is. And, it's always interesting. One of the things I enjoyed when I was going was looking around to see if I could spot other Christian denominations or secular groups that were there that were all marching for the same cause. It's kind of the unity aspect of it too, right? It's, like this is like 93.7% Catholic, but like I want to see who else is there also.
No, man, it was fun though. It's always fun. It's almost like going to a sports stadium, but you're colder and not really watching anything.
And a lot more movement. You're not sitting around.
That's true.
And no beer.
So the point was, it's Respect Life Month, and so a lot of parishes around the country are taking a moment to re-educate their parish about the value of human dignity, or to debate, quite frankly. And I'm a little disappointed because what I saw in one of the local parish bulletins was a hyper political statement. I mean, I was really shocked that they were framing this almost as like a battle, and, we're focusing on what the law is. Totally missed the point of St. Bonaventure, who was like, what's the intent of the heart? Mm-hmm. Because I think you can have two people standing side by side at the March for Life, and one is like really concerned about human dignity and making sure that the person with the smallest voice has an opportunity to be heard. And then you can have, a twin standing next to that person, and they're kind of like, we got to protect, men being in charge. And let's be honest, like, you've got both at that rally. You have both. And I think what we have to pay attention to a little bit more is not to focus so much on the politics, but how do we transform the Catholic pro-life movement into Pope Leo, right? The Pope Leo kind of pro-life. Do you remember the other week when he decided to take the third rail of American politics and just like shake them both? Yeah. By the way, that was a headline on the Crux, which is a Catholic website. So, but do you remember that?
I do. I thought he handled that situation incredibly well, and he brought up a point that I personally really believe in, and something that I've argued since the time I started my conversion process. And it's something that I wish more people would understand, because when you try to reach someone who is not pro-life, this is an often sticking point for them, right? And as someone who has been on both sides of the argument, pro-life, pro-choice, I understand. But it's hard to feel like you are a part of the pro-life movement when your interpretation of pro-life includes life past those first 9 months. And that's what Pope Leo said, which caused a lot of issues. Is, if I may go ahead and spoil this,
please do.
Is Pope Leo goes, yes, being pro-life for the baby in the womb is important, but it's also important to be pro-life once the child is born. It's hard to be pro-life and pro-death penalty. It's hard to be pro-life and be okay with the treatment of undocumented immigrants in this country or around the world. It comes down to human dignity. And it's human dignity not just in the womb, but from natural birth to natural death.
We are not talking in a political way here. We are talking Catholic theology. And so I guess I want to just say a couple things real quick. Pope Benedict dove into this a little bit in his letter Deus Caritas Est. He said, faith by its very nature, is an encounter with the living God. An encounter opening up new horizons, extending beyond the sphere of reason. Then this is really daring. He tries to give God's perspective. He goes, from God's standpoint, let me tell you what God sees. From God's standpoint, faith liberates reason from its blind spots. Remember when I said earlier that we have to encounter people? Our faith has to be connected to like living examples.
Mhm.
So, first and foremost, if you are super passionate on the pro-life, I guess I could say anti-abortion cause, or you are vigorously supportive of a woman choosing, it is important to know that you should not look at somebody who has the opposite opinion of you and be like, I've got, like I can't be friends with them. That is not a good perspective because theologically speaking, you want to kind of go beyond your own experiences and connect back to the daily life of the other person. So Queen of Peace in South Arlington in Virginia is a really, really interesting example. They have a diaper bank, and there's a lot of mothers that come every single week for diapers for their kids. And to me, it's so fascinating because I'm not sure I've seen them be quite as vigorously supportive of the political side of pro-life. I think they tend to be, I'm just guessing because it's Arlington, Virginia, pretty damn liberal. But they're connecting their faith back to the daily lives and the difficulties that these ladies are facing. And it's incredible. So I want to focus a little bit here on how to become a Pope Leo pro-lifer, the theological pro-lifer, not the legal pro-lifer. So I'm going to show you a couple photos. We're going to do an experiment.
Oh boy.
Okay. All right. What is this right here?
That is a globe.
Explain what you're looking at on this globe.
So we're going with the globe on the right, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's your typical globe that you would see in a classroom that shows the world in its spherical self.
Okay.
But also with the boundaries of countries.
Yes, you see all of the countries' names, you see the borders, you see more or less where they fall, right?
Correct.
Okay. Over here, you already gave it away. It's a second globe.
It's another globe, correct.
What are you looking at?
It is the geographical representation of the earth. There's no boundaries. It is just land and sea.
So I was at a diplomatic summit a year ago. The Holy See was actually putting it on the Vatican's offices. And they invited a professor who like really threw them off guard. She got up to speak to all of these ambassadors, and she pulls out a full-size like classroom globe out of her purse. And by the way, I guarantee you she is not getting an invite back because this was like off the wall. She pulled out the globe, and I'm looking at it from the audience, and I'm realizing that it's the globe without the boundaries on it, and it's just the geography. It's just like you can see the mountains, you can see where the sand of the Sahara Desert is, you can see the Great Lakes. It's looking at land, right? In theology, we are not interested in the boundaries that man has put together, but we are interested in the geography upon which we all live. I know you're going to call me woke for that, but that's not woke. That's just...
I wasn't going to say anything.
We live in this world, and so when God is looking at us from his vantage point, faith is liberating us from these boundaries that we have drawn. And we have to understand each one of us designed in accord with God's will and in God's image, as you said earlier. So let's kind of go through a couple examples. Here's an abstract one. What the heck does it mean to be born? Like if I'm a lawyer, whether it's a church lawyer or like a trial lawyer, and I'm looking at somebody, like what am I potentially interested in knowing about them? Any guesses?
When they're born, probably like when they came out of the womb, like the legal...
The time?
Yeah. Like
the timestamp?
The time, the date.
The place?
The place, the doctor... Or in my case, the doctor fudged the time because he wanted to make sure he could watch Wheel of Fortune.
Oh my gosh.
True story.
Is that real?
It's a true story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
6:27 p.m. because he didn't like even numbers.
That's so weird.
Yeah, but it had to be born before 6:30 because that's when Wheel of Fortune came on.
So if a lawyer has to talk about a newborn baby, they're probably primarily interested in age and place, because your age and your place determines your rights and your status.
Yes.
Are you an American? Are you not an American? Okay. That's how a lawyer thinks. It is really important to have lawyers. It is really important to have law and order. That is not the kind of pro-life movement that we are talking about here. We are trying to shift our mind to the theological. Before we go to what a theologian would ask, what do you think your doctor, who apparently was very, very busy that night, what do you think your doctor would want to ask about a newborn baby?
Is the baby healthy?
Okay. Can they cry?
Oh yeah, can they? Yeah, are they okay? Like, can they cry? Are they breathing?
Yeah, nutrition.
Yeah.
Okay, so if a lawyer is interested in status and rights, what is a doctor interested in?
The well-being of the child.
Dude, exactly. I mean, because of the questions that a doctor cares about, what are the vital signs? Can they cry? That determines their health status. Okay. So a moral theologian is not a doctor, a medical doctor, and a moral theologian is not a lawyer. So from a Catholic perspective, from a religious perspective, you got to think, what does it mean to be born? Right? It's not the biological stuff. Although it is important that you are born in a body, you cannot separate the body and the person. But a moral theologian is going to say, okay, we have a person that has come into the world, and there's this assumption that this person has a relationship with a mother, right? Your mom gave birth to you. Hopefully you have two parents, but you were at least assumed to come into the world with a mother.
Correct.
There's a relationship into culture almost immediately. Like, you think about the different ways that different cultures handle midwifery and giving birth. You are born into a culture immediately. So again, it's another term about relationship. The interesting thing is this is why Catholics care about adoption so much, because adoption is seen theologically as restoring God's will for a child. It's not about what the lawyer would think about, and it's definitely not what the doctor would think about. It's about restoring God's will. So let's talk about marriage. Is that in your future?
God only knows.
Okay. We hope.
Single is less stressful.
So for the pro-life cause, I think it's probably obvious why we care about marriage, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you imagine 200 years ago, they had no way to tell if people were like fertile or capable of conceiving a child in advance?
Yeah.
Like, now you can know before you get married. But that, like, when the church is writing the rules, I know we've talked about monks and cells, but like, even in the 18 and 1900s, there were times where people just had absolutely no access to this information. So the church just kind of assumes, like, yeah, you're fertile, right? And if not, maybe your body's broken. I don't know. But so the church described marriage in a very, very legal way. It said the primary goal of marriage is the procreation and education of children. In fact, the church actually, for the longest time, thought that even if you were trying to have kids, there was still a little bit of sin in having sex in a married life. Again, rules written by monks and cells. But the church has been able to since connect back to the life and the struggle of a real couple by people telling their stories. So in that description of marriage, what do you think the church's goal was? Because the church was describing marriage in like a very legal way. Like, what was the goal?
I mean, it sounds like you're trying to manage societal needs.
Yeah. Yeah, and almost like you're a factory manager, right? We need more kids. We need kids.
We need more people to build cars. We need more people to help cut trees down. We need more people to...
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not bad or necessarily wrong, right? It's disconnected from what people are facing. But if you think about the two globes that we were talking about, this description is definitely the globe with all of the political boundaries, right? So from God's vantage point, let's take this over to a theologian. Let's try this again. So in 1965, a really tumultuous time in the world is like mass media starting to happening. The world, just quite frankly, is becoming more open and liberal, especially with sexual matters. So they talk about marriage in a totally different way. It's an intimate partnership of married life and love, rooted in consent, mutual self giving. It is not instituted solely for procreation. Rather, its very nature as an unbreakable compact between persons demands that the mutual love of the spouses be embodied in a rightly ordered manner and that it grow and ripen. Way more flowery language, but it's almost like when Pope Francis is like, who am I to judge? This is the church letting the fresh air in for 1965. So if the first one was the more legal outlook, how is the church describing it? Like, what's the goal of the theological version or description of marriage?
It's intentional love, right? It's being authentic, right? It's self-giving. It's, it's more intentional.
That's exactly it. And it's focused less on a factory of humans and it's more about holiness.
Yes.
I mean, we've talked a million times about how the church is learning to understand holiness as a lifelong process of becoming everything that you were made for. And as we've talked multiple times in this episode already, you were made in the image of God, and you were made to be in relationship or in community with other people. And marriage is like the prime example of total self-giving. And so obviously marriage is super important for the pro-life movement, but we don't want to hyper legalize it or accidentally turn advocacy into like managing a factory. So the last one, we've talked a lot about the March for Life. And obviously the right to life movement includes a lot of things. It can be people with end of life issues, which are super difficult. It can be people who are not sure if they're going to be able to carry the baby to term or afterwards how they're going to afford to feed the baby and take care of the baby and educate the baby. But the primary thing of the March for Life is focused on the law, especially as it relates to whether or not abortion is allowed. I think that we really screw this up. What if you were an outside observer watching the March for Life, what would you think our goal is with this march? It's like how are we viewing abortion, or what are we reducing it down to?
Yeah. So, from an outsider's perspective, abortion can easily be interpreted as criminal, right? Something that's destroying life, and that's the reason of the pro-life march, right? Like that's, when you take a look at it from an outsider's perspective, especially if you watch it on the news, yeah, you have a bunch of people there singing and chanting and praying, but you also have like those disturbing images, right? That can portray abortion as this crime that is destroying human life.
It's not so much the boundaries that we mark by framing it in this particular way that I take issue with, as much as it is we don't teach people how to discover beyond our own blind spots.
Yeah.
To quote Pope Benedict, the whole idea about being pro-life is that each of us are created with this dignity, this human dignity that you can't own or you can't take from me, that there's nothing I could do to lose it. There's nothing I could do to earn it. I just have it by very nature of being born. And this dignity stays with me throughout my whole life. And so the point that I wish that we would gather is to be like St. Bonaventure, to go deep into the intent of the heart. Are we trying to make something illegal or restricted because we care a lot about the power and the structure and the rights? Or are we trying to change the law because we want to see a society that really recognizes someone's innate dignity and we are there to accompany them all the way through, whether that's they need diapers on Wednesday mornings in South Arlington, Virginia, or they are terminally ill and really doubting their own value because, hey, I'm sick and I'm bedridden and I'm not able to do my hobbies. I'm not able to get out and to see my friends. These are things that impact people's ability to see their own dignity. I mean, when you're struggling to put food on the table for a child, that really strikes at the heart of a mother. And so we have a tendency to just kind of make this too legal and not super theological. The funny thing, when Pope Leo XIV was talking to the press about this issue, he was making it very clear that in order to be pro-life, you have to do a lot of things, right? He said these issues are complex. And then he also said they are very clear. And if you're a lawyer, you're like, what?
Lawyers don't like that answer.
No, not at all. Even if you're a doctor and you're like describing your symptoms to the doctor and you're like, complex, but they're very clear. That's probably also not good. But to a theologian, we're okay with this sort of complexity and this tension because the world that we live in is very, very complex. There is a priest, he's a theologian, his name is Father Gerald Gleason. He said, the key to circumventing, to getting around such debates is to realize that our moral evaluation is basically concerned first, not with the physical or the physiological features. So like anything that you learned in science class in high school, that is not what our moral theology is concerned about first and foremost, but with the nature of an action. What is it that you want to achieve? He says nature. He's not saying like, what are the biological functions? He's saying, what is the goal? What's the purpose? It goes back to what St. Bonaventure said. So a theologian, in order to convey what it means to have that right to life, you got to start with the human dignity of the person created by God. And you have to dive deep into that mystery, right? You encounter someone with Down syndrome. You're like, wow, I am not sure that they're ever going to be the CEO of a company. And you're probably right. But to then look for their dignity and the things that they can teach you in other ways. You may look at someone who is on their deathbed and be like, wow, this is a sad figure of the person that I used to know. But to dive deep into the mystery and understand what lessons can they teach you from that bed, from where they can barely move. That is what a theologian has to do in order to start being pro-life. Is it important to go to the marches and to the rallies? I don't know, to be honest. I'm not sure what St. Bonaventure and other theologians would say. I think it's fun. I think it's a great community exercise. But being pro-life, it means diving deep into the mystery of the human person, especially those that you don't want to have to acknowledge as equal to yourself.
Yep.
So, okay, we will leave that there for the remainder of Respect Life Month. So if you're following on social media, you may have noticed that we have been teasing something lately.
What?
Yeah. So we're finally almost there. This book that's coming out, Theology for the Unwanted. You know, I wrote this book 2.5 years ago.
I remember.
Did you know that it takes that long to get a book published?
I believe it.
Yeah.
I remember all the stories you were telling me of the trials and tribulations of you going through the process.
Well, I am super grateful for Paulus Press for being willing to take a risk on me. I've done some political work for the church, which is interesting because this whole podcast here has been about not doing the politics of the church, but instead diving into the theology. You're going to get that perspective from me. All the things that I wish that the church would dive deep in. And John, so you got a copy of the book way before anyone else did.
I did.
Do you remember? Oh man, the intro was super dramatic in the beginning. It starts with World War II, and it's like death, destruction, rubble. It's really trying to like set the groundwork for like a very dramatic understanding that in order to do good theology, the theologian has to be reduced to physical rubble on the ground.
Obliterated is a word you used.
Did I use that word?
May I read the first sentence?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay. Following the 2 world wars, many of the survivors of Europe saw their livelihood completely obliterated and their cities lying in ruin.
Okay, I do know that the editor changed that a little bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I mean you have literally the first ever copy.
I have the draft copy right here in my hand.
Yeah, and it's a very dramatic start because when you pick up this book, you know that it's aimed towards LGBT Catholics or Catholics who are divorced and remarried. Maybe you're expecting the opening sentence to be something like, "When I was a boy." Do you want to describe that inside joke?
So we had a bishop that for, oh gosh, what was it, confirmation? Whenever he would come, he would recycle the same speech and it never changed. And his tonal inflections were the same every single time. And we just, the running joke was is everyone had their own version of doing it. And it was, when I was a young boy going for my confirmation, I was so scared I wanted to crawl under my pew.
I know that for any of our friends that may be listening, that your eyes are getting wide right now. And
Oh
you're
my
like, I
God.
remember this speech because we all went through it every year. No, he would really harp on pornography
Yes.
and sins of the flesh and chastity. But you're right. It was the same speech just recycled over and over and over. And it was making points about whether or not you were on the right or wrong side of the church. You know what's funny is he's been retired for a while now and he's different.
Is he?
Yeah. I guess there's something to be said about when you are not in charge,
Mhm.
when you're not the lawyer, when you're not the CEO, you can speak from the heart. You can speak from your own true intentions. Yeah, he gave a speech. It was probably about a year ago, and of course, everyone expected it to be the "when I was a boy." But no, he actually said, sometimes people of the same gender fall in love. And I think at this point we're all like gripping our seats, like what's about to happen. And he goes,
He's going rogue.
I know, right? Yeah, this wasn't on the teleprompter. And he says, and we shouldn't make fun of them. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
I'm sorry. I'm gonna be a doubting Tom on this one. I'm gonna need to see this to believe this.
okay, I have witnesses I can connect you to.
All right.
Yeah, he went rogue. Maybe like St. Bonaventure, he spoke from his true intentions. That we don't always have to be a lawyer enforcing things that are supposed to be very clear, but we can accept that they're complex. This book aims to teach that in very plain language. And we will give more teasers probably next week.
I want to say this. You say plain language. I want to say it's very relatable. It's language that when you read it, you're not going to have to open up an encyclopedia or a thesaurus or anything like that. It's language that you can comprehend. And I think that's one of the biggest things I love the most about this book, Dan, is that it's very easy for a normal person that may not be a scholar, it may be just a person in the pew, a common folk person like you and I, picking up a book and we're able to read it and not feel like we're not knowledgeable. It's very easy to read it. And even if you maybe disagree, it presents it in a way that's understandable. And I think that's the biggest thing is a lot of times when we start talking about complex ideas, we have a tendency as a society to want to use big words, big fancy words to prove the authenticity of what we're trying to say. And by doing that, it loses the meaning because most people aren't going to stop and be like, well, wait, what does this 13 syllable word actually mean? and when in reality, it just means truth or happiness or love. Break it down. And that's what I love about this book is that it's a very relatable book for everyone to read.
The best book that I have ever read on this topic was 600 pages. 600 pages, and it is not published in English. It's only in Italian and probably German and French. Point being, I can't think of anything worse to give somebody who is really struggling, who's barely hanging on with their faith, a 600-page book in a foreign language, it's like, hey, the answer's here. The worksheet is here. It will tell you how to get there. But by the way, you think your struggles in life are bad. No, wait till you try and comprehend this sentence. So when I was writing the book, a lot of it was trying to prepare myself to have tough conversations with my parents, because I'd actually kind of thought about the book long before I wrote it. And what I had always thought about was my parents are very devout. They're excellent Catholics. They, at least initially, were not going to support me. And you know what? That doesn't make them bad people. These are actually some of the best people that I know. So it's complicated. So how do I tell my parents that this is who I am? This is how I know I still have faith. This is how I believe God is calling me to live my life, and why. And then in the book, I give 3 specific ways that, based off of Catholic history, I believe we might end up handling this issue. You know, Pope Leo said that the attitudes of the church have to change first. That's actually precisely it. That's the precursor to every development that there has ever been in doctrine. But I give 3 specific ways that I think we might go. And one of them, I even believe that the church might be there before I turn 50, and I'm 34. So this book hopefully will help a lot of people. I'm very thankful for Bishop Felix Gamer for endorsing it. And we also had several other professors that have written in. I know you are still releasing. John is the man behind the curtain, by the way, who's slowly releasing the quotes. So, okay. Yeah, that's it. Stay tuned, because something really good is coming before the end of this year. And I'm excited to see how this helps people take the next step in their own lives. Okay. So having said that, as always, John and I love reading your messages. We are so grateful to everyone that writes in on Instagram at Unwanted or on the website theologyfortheunwanted.com. We read your stories. We take into consideration what it is that you suggest to us, even if we are not able to incorporate that into the show. We think about it. So go out there and share your stories. They matter not only for us, but they matter for the church. No one should be silent. You have dignity, and you are a gift to this world, even if those around you in the pews haven't figured it out yet. So until next time, thank you for listening. This is Theology for the Unwanted.